Elaine Harries.
Hello, Ben. How are you?
I'm very good. Welcome.
Thank you.
For those that don't know Elaine, I think it's worth just setting the scene.
Okay.
I first met you, I bet it's 10 years ago.
At least 10 years ago, yeah.
And you were a bit of a pocket rocket because you were in a very male-dominated sector.
I was.
In a sector that's a very important part of our local economy and nationally.
Yeah.
But that was, of course, the logistics sector in Northamptonshire.
I know.
So for those that are watching or listening, just give us a brief background of what you achieved in your career, in your logistical career, that is.
Yeah.
And
Well, I ran a transport business in Northampton, and we specialised in courier work, parcels, pallets. We did same day, we did storage, and I met you actually through advertising. We'd done some advertising at a previous business that you'd worked at, and
Business Times. We can say it. It's fine.
Okay, that's fine. I wasn't sure, and then we met up, and you were just setting up the
All
business.
things business, yeah.
And I think I was one of the first people to sign up with you to do some advertising.
Yeah, I think you were.
Definitely one of the best things I'd ever done. Seriously, I mean, actually, moving on from logistics, I moved into another business. I did a startup business with a former business partner, and we advertised again in your publication.
One of your brand ambassadors is Harry Kane.
Harry Kane, that's right. Yeah,
I hope he's all right after that horrendous fall at Goodison Park the other day.
Do you know? I couldn't tell you. He's a lovely guy. He did a great job for us with the product. No, absolutely nothing about football. So,
and just before any Spurs fans get in touch, I do love Harry Kane. Okay. But I did think that was a bit theatrical. You won't understand that.
I've got no idea. I mean, I do know that my sister's husband is a massive Spurs fan. So he was over the moon that we were working with Harry on the product and everything.
Yeah, great guy. Good leader. But this is all about you. And people that have probably got this far now are listening probably on the back of how we've promoted this episode, because we're going to talk about menopause and menopause in the workplace. If you'd said to me a year ago that I'd be doing a podcast about menopause in the workplace, I would have probably disagreed.
Yeah.
But times change, and you're now, I've described you to a few people as the menopause lady, which I hope is okay, by the way.
No, that's fine.
So let's kick off with your story and why menopause and spreading the message behind it is so important to you now.
I mean, I never started out to become a champion for the menopause. But what happened was, and I didn't realise it at the time, I actually became perimenopausal, which is the stage before menopause, when I was 39, which is relatively young. And I started having all these symptoms at work, and I was getting these hot flushes and, these dreadful mood swings. I turned into, I can only describe as a monster. I had these terrible rages, and having been a relatively calm, normal person, I couldn't understand what was going on. And as you alluded to the fact that I did work in quite a male-dominated industry, and for the next sort of 6 or 7 years, I just suffered dreadfully. As I said, it was mood swings, hot flushes. I couldn't sleep. And when I say I couldn't sleep, I was getting an hour or two a night, waking up. I actually thought I was going mad. That's how I generally felt. I couldn't talk to anybody about it. I didn't understand what was going on. And it came to a conclusion one night. I was on the motorway, and this thought came through my mind that I thought, I can't do this anymore. I'm just going to drive into the barrier. And it frightened me. I just like, oh my God, I am going mad. And I phoned my doctors and got an emergency appointment. I went down to see my doctor and explained all these things that was happening to me. And she just said to me, Elaine, it's not you. She said, it's your hormones. She said, you are going through. And she then explained what perimenopausal was, what the menopause was. And it's like, right, okay, well, now I understand. So what do I do about it? But I unfortunately didn't have a particularly supportive doctor. And this, for me, is where it went wrong for me. She didn't agree with HRT. She was concerned about the impact. Obviously, there'd been some studies done many, many years before that there was an increased chance of breast cancer and blood clots. So quite simply, she refused to prescribe anything. She offered me antidepressants, which I didn't want because I didn't think I was depressed. But basically said, look, it happens to all women. shut up and go away and get on with it. And that's what I tried to do. But you can't. It's a medical condition. It's a hormone imbalance. And it's like saying to somebody that's got diabetes that needs insulin, don't take your insulin. Just, you can't do that. But I mean, and this is, I'm going back about 9 years now. So, we're having the conversation now, and that's great. But 9 years ago, you didn't talk to your family about it. I felt ashamed that I was going through it. And with hindsight, looking back, my business partner that I worked with would have been so understanding if I'd have said to him.
Let's just go back to that point. Did you feel that you couldn't talk to anybody because you felt ashamed?
Yeah, I felt absolutely as though I'd done something wrong, and there wasn't.
What about friends and family female friends and family that had gone through, or is it just a bit of a taboo subject?
It's something that we didn't really talk about. I mean, my mother unfortunately I lost my mum relatively young. So, and I remember a few comments being made to my mum as when I was younger from my dad, oh, you're miserable, or, whatever. But no, didn't talk to my sisters about it. I had one friend that was slightly older than me that she was going through it. And she was a person that I turned to that helped get me through it, I suppose, because she was a lot older and she'd been through it. But no, it was something that and I don't know why it wasn't spoken about back then like it is now.
Well, you say like it is now. It wasn't until we had lunch a couple of months ago that I realised that menopause, obviously I say I know what menopause is. I don't. I've heard of menopause. I think I'm generally a pretty good barometer for most people. I might shoot myself down here on this, but I rightly or wrongly just presumed that menopause is something that happened to ladies probably in their 50s. And if you were to say to me what are the symptoms, Ben, I'd probably say hot flushes. I wouldn't have said mood swings, although I would have probably said there'd be. And it might last for a few months. It's only when after I spoke to you and then had a look did my own sort of research, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually quite significant, because every woman will go through menopause. It's just a question of when. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a natural process of women as we get older, and every woman has a different experience with it. Not everybody will have symptoms. I've got a couple of friends that didn't even know they'd been through it.
And how do you know when you're going through it, or like what happens? Is there a diagnosis, for example?
Well, it is. I mean, menopause is effectively when you stop producing eggs as a woman. So, and you then go 12 months without having a period. You are then considered to be in the menopause. The perimenopause stage before that, as I said, and I was 47 when I had my last period, which again is relatively young because the average age is about 51, 52. But I'd gone through 8 years before then of the perimenopause. That would mean, and without getting too graphic, but we need to talk about these things. I sometimes had a period that lasted 3 months. That just did not stop. I could then go 6 months without having one. I had a really embarrassing situation one day at work where I leaked everywhere. That is a real, and especially as you're, the MD of the business, it was, God, what do I do? And luckily I was able to talk to one of the women there, and we wrapped a coat around me, and I managed to go home and get changed. And, these are things that actually happen. So,
the reason I'm so glad that you've sat down with me today to talk about this is for that very reason, because there will be people within businesses across the country that have got female employees that are going through this, or that will be going through it in some point in the future. What do you think business owners or business owners within the smaller companies, but businesses at a corporate level, can do to support female colleagues that are approaching or going through the menopause?
Well, I think it's really disappointing that the government decided not to make it a protected characteristic.
That's the menopause pledge.
Yeah. The actual as menopause becoming a protected characteristic under the Equality Act, because it's having such a huge impact. Now, another symptom of menopause is brain fog. So your memory's not great. So I do apologise that I've got some of my notes written down here. But the reality is it's having a massive impact on businesses. There's been several surveys done. In fact, I'll go through a couple here. The PD back in 2019 carried out a general survey of which 6 in 10 women said symptoms had had a negative impact on their job. The Women's Inequality Committee did a workplace inquiry back in July 2021, and 69% of women said they suffered with anxiety and depression, but 72% felt they were less able to concentrate at work. Now, this is having a massive impact, on the workplace. Again, you might have a situation where you've employed Sarah for 20 years, done an amazing job, and then suddenly overnight she stops coming in, she's coming in sick, she's not able to do what she's doing, she's snappy, she's falling out with her colleagues. People don't understand why, and nobody asks the questions, what's changed in your life, because they don't know how to approach it. You imagine a 30-year-old managing someone like me. How does he sit down with me to try and understand what's changed at work, or what can he do to help? And there is a lot of things that can be done.
So on that, do you think that's more of a HR responsibility, or do you think it has to start higher up?
I think everybody has a responsibility. I mean, a lot of businesses that are dealing with this don't have the luxury of an HR department.
Yeah,
it just doesn't. It's fine if you're one of the big corporates, but even they're not getting it right either, because it's seen. And in fact, this is a really good thing. When I first spoke to my brother-in-law about the fact that I wanted to do this awareness training for businesses, he said, "Oh, let me tell you my favourite joke." I was like, "Go on then." And he said, "Why is the menopause?"
Spurs winning a trophy.
Do you know what?
Sorry.
I'm going to absolutely go back and say that. Yeah, go back to that. Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
And he said, so why is the menopause called the menopause? I was like, I don't know. And he's like, because mad cow disease was already taken. Cue hilarious laughter. And that's how the menopause is seen. Do you remember, what was that comedian?
Yeah, I get, it's difficult. I mean, I'm probably a generation below, younger than your brother-in-law.
Yeah.
And I remember similar conversations like that, probably from my mum's era, from family members or whatever.
Yeah. Well, they call it going through the change.
Yeah, going through the change.
Was it Les Dawson? Did you remember him? And he did that female character with his neighbour, and they'd sit there and he's going through the change. Yeah, that's how it was done.
And I get that. And whilst I think that we as a country, as a society, have got too many snowflakes, and I think there's a lot of stuff that we do as a country that I think has just gone too far, and I scratch my head and think this world's gone mad. Yeah. The thing that I've probably felt a little bit guilty about was being so uneducated about menopause. And when you think about every woman is going to go through the menopause, it's just a question of when, not if.
Yeah.
That's massive.
That's half the population.
And then like some of those statistics that you've just said there, but more importantly, you driving down the M1.
Yeah.
Thinking it's all over, that's not acceptable. And if the chances are, if you felt like that, there are many other women that have as well. Yeah. Some of them perhaps just haven't, brave probably the wrong word, but some of them probably don't feel brave enough to be able to have a voice to try and make that difference. Yeah. And therefore that says to me that they're probably suffering in silence. And that's the bit where I'm like, we can make a difference here. And that's one of our core values as a business, Elaine. You know me well enough now, but if there's one business out there that listens or watches this podcast that implements change, or for people within their business in terms of menopause support, menopause policy, then I'll be very, very happy. We certainly will do. So just talk us through now, sort of current day. Yeah. You're going into businesses and implementing policies or talking or raising awareness. Just talk us about that.
I stepped away from work just over 12 months ago because I felt that I just wasn't able to give the jobs that I was doing what it needed. That's just how I felt. And I sat down and...
Sorry, because you had a fantastic job, great career. Was that as a result of your menopause experience? Because you're still going through the menopause now?
Yeah, I'm sort of 17 years later, and my symptoms are nowhere near as bad as they used to be, and I'm starting to come out of the other side of it. But I do still have night sweats. I do still have the only way I can describe it is that je ne sais quoi about life. I was always excited about life. You know, I was a very confident, independent woman. And a lot of that has gone now. You know, I question myself a lot more now than I never used to. And in fact, sitting here now, I'm not comfortable sat here talking about myself even now because I feel quite vulnerable. You know, again, I still feel like, oh, you know, I mean, people might be turned off by, oh, here we go talking about the menopause again. But I'm determined.
Those people would have turned off after the first 60 seconds.
Hopefully. But what I'm hoping to do and what I'm trying to do is I now go into businesses, and it's only businesses that I want to work with as well. I'm in a fortunate position because if you're a business that just wants to pay lip service to it, then go online, get a cheapo course, tick your box and say that you've done it. What I enjoy doing is going out into a business and sitting down and having the conversation with the group of people, because it's not just women, men are massively impacted by it.
So I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because we're in a female dominated business, Arthur. We've got more ladies that work with us than men. And I made a throwaway comment that there's probably only 3 or 4 ladies that would be approaching menopause within the business. But that's because I was uneducated, because the other ladies in the business are probably in their 20s.
Yeah.
But statistically, there's every chance that 1 or 2 of them could still go into the menopause within the next 6 or 7 years, okay? Yeah. The awareness piece isn't just as an employer that we can support the ladies within the business, but it's also to educate the men in the business in terms of how we should communicate with our fellow female colleagues, because we just perhaps need to just ask ourselves a question internally, not to them. I've noticed a change in that person. Is that because she might be going through the menopause? Now, there's another question there about how that individual then finds out, and there's a whole education piece, because. But
that's where this course comes in. I sit down with managers and help.
You've had the pleasure of meeting Fraser, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah. So I love him to bits, but. Like, he could cause me a HR nightmare by asking.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I joke about that because he has got a heart of gold. But me as well, we need to understand what our colleagues might be going through, and then how to deal with it, because it does have a big impact for men. And obviously, I think all of the men in here have either got wives or partners.
Yeah.
Some of them might be experiencing, so it'll be a good education for them, both as a parent and as a husband. But
it has a massive impact because, as I said, you've been happily married to your wonderful partner for 20, 25 years, and literally overnight, this person changes. She's got these mood swings. You're not doing that right. She's crying all the time, and all these changes are coming in, and men don't know what to do. What's wrong? What can I do to help? And so if there's sort of more understanding and support for men as well, because I do very much feel that there is a male menopause as well. Changes happen to men. The more I've sort of researched it, things change to men. But again, that is even more of a taboo subject, that people
what do you mean by that? Like,
well, sort of like physical changes go on with a man's body, and how mentally men feel. A lot of men reach their 50s, and and they've had their children, they've grown up. They have exactly the same, I think, issues as women do. About,
I think that's where it's that Les Dawson moment, and people call it a midlife crisis. You go from the family car into the Porsche 911, and you're like, oh my god, why has he done that for?
But these crises are affecting business, though.
Yeah, I need to ask you about the physical element, though. Men's bodies changing when they get later on?
Yeah, they do. They do. They have sort of there's changes in their hormones within their bodies as well. They gain weight and things like that. So, I mean, listen, I'm not a doctor and I'm not an expert on it. But the more I read and the more I speak to people, and one of the things I'm finding when I do go out to businesses, that you start off with the piece about the menopause, but it opens up a whole new dialogue about the whole culture of businesses anyway. And I end up doing sort of coaching on other things.
Very, very important topic. So if you fast forward 12 months, where would you like to see your journey as a menopause champion, the menopause lady, as I introduce you to people as? Where would you like to see the business community within
Well, I'd like
in terms of how they're embracing menopause.
I'd like to
within the
see
workplace.
more of the businesses signing up to the Menopause Pledge, where they are open to being more supportive, flexible working very much within businesses, because there's so many things, adjustments that businesses can do. So, for instance, hot flushes, they're dreadful. Momentarily, I used to feel like I was having a heart attack when I got mine. Something as simple as letting that woman sit near a window or getting them a fan could make all the difference. If you are having problems with, your periods and things like that, if you work in a call centre where you only get one break in the morning and one break in the afternoon and you're not allowed to go to because that's how it has to be, being aware of that so that woman hasn't got to stick her hand up and embarrass herself in front of everybody because she needs to keep going to the toilet every hour. If someone isn't, for me, the biggest thing was the lack of sleep. I was trying to run a business on less than 2 hours sleep a night, and it was, I should have reached out, I should have asked for help, and I felt that I couldn't. But if you have those conversations with your staff, there's adjustments that you could make. What about letting someone start slightly later at work?
Yeah.
There are so many different things that potentially could be done to help. But it's just having the confidence to start the conversation. And it's not by saying, so are you menopausal? That is not the right way to sit and start having that conversation. But this course hopefully gives management some tips and ideas on how to start those conversations and the sort of adjustments that could be made for women in the workplace.
Okay. Elaine, it's always lovely to see you.
No, you too.
I'm very grateful that you've sat down and been so open and honest.
Thank you.
And you without a doubt, you're definitely going to make a difference. If my last question for you, if there is somebody within government that's in control of policy, etc., if they were to now watch this particular clip, what message would you give to them in terms of making it policy going forward?
I would just ask them to reconsider the decision they've taken about making it a protected characteristic. It's not about giving the women the go-ahead to take as much time off as they like or woe is me. There needs to be some changes because women over 50 can add so much value to businesses. They really can. And, there's sort of over 4 million women currently employed between the sort of 45 to 55 age group. And if you're getting 60% of them that are leaving their jobs because of the menopause, you're losing an awful lot of, skills and abilities. Apart from that, it costs the business to have to try and bring somebody new in, retrain them. So, please start considering on your recruitment policies women over 50 because we do have a lot to offer.
Elaine, thank you very much.
Not at all. Nice to see you, Ben.